Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm grateful to everyone who's contributed to this very short but very interesting debate. And as colleagues have noted, when we think about tax transparency, we are in what might, I think these days referred to as a niche area of taxation, technical but no less important, in some respects more important, that we not get lost in the detail, but be able to come back and talk about these issues more widely. If I may, what I'll do is address the different clauses and then come to the specific points that have been raised in the debate. Madam Deputy Speaker, new clause 27 would require the government to review all tax reliefs contained in the Act. States that the review must contain the following: the number of tax reliefs, the effect of taxation revenue for each of the reliefs, and an assessment of the efficacy of systems for designing, monitoring and evaluating the effect of the reliefs. It asks the government to publish the number of tax reliefs within this bill and the effect on taxation revenue of the reliefs. As the House may be aware, the government already publishes tax changes and estimates of the Exchequer impacts of the policy change in the budget documents at each fiscal event. Moreover, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs monitor the effect on taxation revenue of tax reliefs after they're introduced, and they issue an annual tax relief statistics publication, which I'm sure will be closely scrutinised by all members of the House, which includes estimates of the costs of tax reliefs. Building on this, HMRC are also undertaking a project to expand their published cost information, and I'm pleased to remind the House that in May, HMRC published cost estimates for a further 47 previously uncosted reliefs. The new clause also asks for an assessment of the efficacy of systems for designing, monitoring and evaluating the effect of the reliefs. As the House will know, the government consults on new tax reliefs and proposed changes to tax reliefs, bringing in external expertise as part of the policy-making cycle. Wherever possible, officials are constantly working on ways to improve the policy, development, administration and continuing management of reliefs. As colleagues will know, the government, and in particular the Treasury, keeps all reliefs under review. The government also does evaluations of different forms, and this work has included evaluations of a number of significant reliefs, some 15 since 2015. For example, R&D tax credits and entrepreneurs relief, on both of which I'll say a couple of words later on. In 2015, HMRC published an evaluation on R&D tax credits. In 2017, they commissioned an evaluation of entrepreneurs relief that led to a series of reforms, most recently the significant reduction of the lifetime limit at Spring Budget 2020, which is legislated in this bill. The Honourable for Aberdeen South picks up the point about entrepreneurs relief and somehow regards it as the tail wagging the dog. What he calls the tail wagging the dog, other people would call consultation across Parliament and discussion with stakeholders. Since it resulted in a 90% reduction of the scope of the relief, I don't think he can claim there's any lack of ambition in the measure. HMRC will continue to monitor and evaluate reliefs and will bring forward a pipeline of further evaluations in due course, as well as considering a proposal to which I have already said I'm quite sympathetic, and I thank the Honourable Lady, and we've had a discussion on this before, for a more systematic evaluation programme for reliefs. In light of all this, the government does not believe that this amendment is necessary. If I turn to new clause 2, this would require the Chancellor of the Exchequer to review the impacts of the reduction of the lifetime limit of entrepreneurs' relief being legislated in this bill within 6 months of royal assent, and specifically to review the impacts on business investment, employment and productivity in the constituent nations and English regions of the United Kingdom. I would first highlight to honourable members that the government has already conducted an internal review of this relief, which built on the 2017 independent research commissioned by HMRC. That review considered the distributional effects and benefits of the relief against its cost in order to understand better the targeting of the relief. And of course, it in turn has been used to inform the reform that is being legislated for in this bill. And of course, it ensures that the majority of entrepreneurs are unaffected. A lot of the concern about entrepreneurs' relief historically has been that it's not well targeted, and this greatly improves the targeting of the relief. Unfortunately, the effects of these changes to the relief will not be visible within 6 months' time, and for that reason, I would urge the House to reject new Clause 2. On new Clause 4, which concerns structures and buildings allowance, this would require the Chancellor to review the impacts of Clause 30, which makes miscellaneous amendments to the SBA within 6 months of the passing of the Finance Act. And specifically, it would require the Chancellor to review the impacts on business investment, employment, productivity and energy efficiency. I think, again, I would reassure members that both the Revenue and Customs and the Treasury already monitor tax reliefs according to the level of risk that they are deemed to pose. Of course, it's in the nature of a structures and buildings allowance that it is configured to reflect the fact that it can take many years to erect new buildings, and claims under the SBA are ordinarily settled when businesses bring buildings into use and submit tax returns at year end. And for that reason, it would be neither possible nor appropriate to try to draw conclusions on the productivity or energy efficiency impacts of those changes within such a short period of time. If I turn to Clause 17, this would require the government within 12 months to assess and report on the geographical effects of changes to business reliefs across a variety of areas. There is a concern, and I recognise it, that there is a geographic disparity, and that reflects historic evolution of our economy in different areas, and it's by no means a uniform picture even outside London. HMRC do not routinely require businesses to provide geographical information about where expenditures are incurred as part of claims for the R&D expenditure credit, structures and buildings allowance, or intangible fixed assets. In order to do that, changes would be required which would create additional burdens for businesses. And, of course, those claiming those reliefs would only be able to provide information after the year end. For that reason, it's not possible that HMRC, even if it were even if this measure were passed, would have that information within the 12 months stated in the amendment. It's not capable of being fulfilled. HMRC do in fact already publish annual statistics on many tax reliefs, including a detailed breakdown of R&D tax relief claims, which analyses both by region and sector the number of claims and the amount of relief received. However, this regional analysis is based on companies' registered offices, not necessarily where expenditure is incurred. And although the next set of annual R&D relief statistics will be published by HMRC in the autumn, companies can claim R&D tax relief for up to 2 years after the end of their accounting period. So for that reason, the 2020 release will only include claims up to 2018-19, and therefore will not include claims for the increased 13% rate. The government remains, as the House will know, firmly committed to level up across the regions and nations of the UK, and the spring budget provided a £1.14 billion increase to block grant for devolved administrations to spend on their own priorities, in addition to £2.7 billion invested in city deals and another £800 million of funding to support 4 deals in Wales alone, and £1.4 billion, of which and a further £1.4 billion being provided for 10 deals in Scotland. So we fully recognise the importance of supporting regional and devolved administration growth. Finally, on the Enterprise Investment Scheme, this Clause 36, Amendment 1, would require the government to review the economic and geographical impacts of the existing EIS. Now, we did, of course, consider this at Public Bill Committee, and I appreciate the intention of honourable members to use the EIS more strategically, but it has been specifically designed to address a market failure for young, innovative UK companies which seek to obtain patient equity finance in order to grow, and we would not wish to pull it away from that important national function. Companies that use EIS can register wherever they please in the UK, and again, a registered office does not need to be in the same place as to where the bulk of their staff are employed. With your permission, I will just spend a minute or two longer, Madam Deputy Speaker, just addressing specific points raised. The Honourable Lady opposite discussed the tax relief system as unwieldy. It's a view I would share. I think it is unwieldy. I think more work needs to be done. It's grown up over time. I certainly, no one in the government would regard the position as rosy. I should say, the House will know that we receive many billions of pounds, including one just recently, in requests for VAT relief alone. Everyone seems to be terribly keen on improving and tidying up reliefs, but they're also terribly keen on increasing the number of reliefs in their particular area or for their particular sector, for perfectly good democratic reasons we understand, but that creates a natural tension. And of course, as relief costs rise, that's sometimes a very good thing, for example with R&D expenditure credits, where it's supporting, we know it supports high value for money investment, and others it may not be such a good thing. If I can pick up the Honourable Gentleman's point from Thurston Moulton before he intervenes, he's jumped the gun a little bit on me, because we will be discussing New Clause 22 in the next session, and therefore, if he really wishes to land his point, he only has to hang around a little bit longer. But I can give him a sneak preview by saying that New Clause 22 makes sure that people who have made investments under EIS or SEIS schemes do not lose reliefs on those investments, and so it responds to the concern he raised. Recapitalisation is an important issue. It's obviously one the government's closely attending to, and he's right to focus on it. Final point, the Honourable Gentleman Ceredigion makes the point about the importance of greater equity investment in the regions. I very much agree with him, and before I sit down, I will, with deference to the Madam Deputy Speaker, give way to my friend.
I'm very grateful. Is there an intention, I speak as somebody who's benefited from entrepreneurs' relief in the past, so I declare my interest. Is he considering extending the reduction in entrepreneurs' relief, which I do support, to investors' relief, which currently stands at the same figure entrepreneurs' relief used to stand at £10 million?
Minister.
Well, I think if he's asking questions, he has to stay to the next debate, because he's abusing the privilege of this debate. But let me say this. I thank him for his suggestion for a revenue-raising possibility for the government. We take all those in great heart. And with that, I will sit down.
Shadow Minister Bridget Phillipson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I was just going to ask the Minister